Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability. Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley, Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability. Today I'm very honored to have with me Louis Blumberg. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
From the Nature Conservancy. And I used to get your magazine from a friend of mine that had the subscription. They had a lifetime. And I love the organization. I just love it. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about climate and some other things going on. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We get to hear about your trip to Germany and some other things that's going on with climate in a minute. But before we go there, can you tell us about yourself? Are you from the Bay Area? Where are you from? What was your background? How did you get into this?
Well, I was born in Illinois, went to high school in Texas, and came to California in the 60s. Went to UC Santa Barbara. And then I went to graduate school at UCLA and left there in '87. Grad school, moved to San Francisco and got involved in forest conservation for the Wilderness Society, and then was appointed by Gray Davis to be the Deputy Director for External Affairs at the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. And from that position I went...
And wait, to go back, what was your undergraduate and your master's in?
So my undergraduate was in cultural anthropology, and I was a musician in my first career.
Wow.
And I played music professionally in Los Angeles for 15 years, and then went to graduate school in 1985 at UCLA.
That's an interesting, really, I wouldn't have expected that. That's an interesting background.
Yeah, so I made that change and went to grad school and majored in, got a master's degree in urban planning with an emphasis in environmental policy. And I moved, as I said, to San Francisco in 1987, and then worked at the Wilderness Society for 10 years, and then went to work for Gray Davis when he was the governor.
Which is amazing. That's an amazing history to have for what you're doing.
And that's when I started to work on the role of nature as a climate solution in 2000 with Gray Davis. 2004, I went to the Nature Conservancy. I've been there ever since.
Wow, so it's been a long time. So 15? No.
I've been working on climate for 17 years.
17
right.
years,
yes,
okay.
on climate policy.
Wow. And it's such an amazing thing that you're doing. And you guys have so much that you do. Let's pull up the first slide to look at what you guys do before we get into the climate. So this is a little bit of the history, and I love this photo. This was on your website, so I snagged it. 1915 was the first year that the kind of idea came about, and we'll go to the next slide. And then if you look at the history on the next slide, your website actually talks about all the way till now, and I didn't list everything because there was so much history there, but these were some of the things I thought was really interesting, and we just kind of plucked that out. This is actually a picture of my grandmother in Colorado hiking. It looks like she's wearing a suit. So back in the 40s, that's what they wore. They didn't have hiking clothes. They just wore the natural, the things that they wore. We can go to the next slide too really quick. And then this is what you guys work on as a total: land, climate, water, ocean, city. And put a little sample of some things in California. There's Hawaii, ocean in Hawaii that's really beautiful. One beach there. Another beach we went to, there was garbage on the beach coming up from the ocean. So let's pull that down. So the work you guys are doing is so important.
Well, we are the world's largest conservation organization. We have operations in all 50 United States. We're operating in 70 countries. We have 4,000 staff, and we have over 1 million members.
Wow.
And the priorities you put up, those are our current priorities. And I've been very fortunate to be able to focus on climate change, which is often unusual in the environmental field, to have really the support to really drill down deep into one area.
So one of the things that's in your history is land purchases, and it talks about Costa Rica and something like 230,000 acres that was purchased. And originally it was purchased from military to preserve the area, and it's just, the history is just so deep, and I think that was 60s maybe, if my memory is correct, but people can go to your history on the site to look at that. And again, what you're doing is just so amazing, and it's so huge, 1 million people. I mean, do you remember the year they started taking subscriptions? Was it
No,
80s?
I don't. It's been a long time.
I think it was 50s, 60s, maybe 80s. We'll have to go back and look at the website, but it's also on there. People can go check that out. So tell us about the climate portion and what you're doing. Dig into that a little.
So our board of directors, our national board of directors, has determined that climate change is the single largest threat to our mission. Our mission is to protect the land and waters on which all life depends. And the changes that are happening now and will happen in the climate threaten our ability to succeed in that mission. And so climate change is one of the 5 priorities that you talked about. And so we're looking at climate change, I like to think of it at 2 levels. One is we're addressing the problem. We're tackling it head on. We're looking at reducing emissions and helping to transform the energy sector, and we're looking at helping communities and people prepare for the impacts. And then if we could have the next slide.
Okay, yeah, let's pull up the next slide. So we've got a bunch of slides now that are part of your presentation. So
the next one.
Okay, so this is the climate solution. Pull the next one up.
We're looking at nature, natural climate solutions as well. So there's 2 levels. One is climate at large, and then we also have a focus on natural climate solutions. And this is using the power of nature to address climate change, which is what gives us a very unique role. And so we can reduce and avoid emissions by conserving forests, for example, or natural lands. We can also remove carbon from the atmosphere and restore it back into the earth where it came from through carbon sequestration. So the land sector is the only sector in climate that actually can remove carbon and put it back in the earth. And then we're also working to enhance the resilience and reduce climate magnified risk. So it's a triple win, and at the same time we can do all that with nature, we produce a whole suite of other public benefits like clean water, food security, biodiversity, recreation, and so forth. So nature is indeed a very powerful tool to address climate change, and that's really what I've been focusing on.
And I think biodiversity, you mentioned that, is such an important thing that people don't realize how important that is. The potato famine, we here in America only get a limited amount of potatoes, but there's thousands of varieties of them, just like tomatoes and other things.
And apples too.
Right, and avocados. There's like 6,000 varieties and we only get a handful of them here. So making sure that there's biodiversity going on that helps nature. Let's pull up the next slide here. And I know we have 6 in a row.
Well, you wanted...
So this here, tell us about this one.
Well, so what California has been doing, and what I've been doing with California, initially with Gray Davis in 2000, California has worked to develop a comprehensive climate change program. That's passed, was eventually grounded in law in 2006, the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006. And the California's program is working. That's the bottom line. It is actually working. California is regulating climate emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and growing the economy. And so if we could have that slide back up.
Okay, let's pull that one back up.
With the graph, you can see on this graph, that the green line on the top is going up, and that is the gross domestic product per capita. It's gone up 3.5% since the law started being implemented in 2013. And the bottom line, the blue line, is going down to the emissions. So the emissions are going down, the economy is going up. And this dispels this myth that, in fact, that you cannot regulate climate change without having negative economic effects. In fact, it's just the opposite. That the regulating climate has been good for California's economy. So when I started,
now is that due to the carbon offsetting?
No. This is the offsetting is just a small piece of the program. So when I started in 2000 working on climate change for Gray Davis, California, had it been a separate country, would have been the 9th largest economy and the 12th largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Well, today, it's the 6th largest economy, and it would be the 18th largest emitter of greenhouse gases. So in my tenure, I've seen the myth dispelled. The economy is growing, climate change is being addressed. The state has added 500,000 clean energy jobs. That's 10 times more jobs in clean energy in California alone that are in the entire mining industry, coal mining industry in the United States. So this program is working. It's comprehensive. It addresses 85% of the emissions of the economy, unlike the European system, which only looks at about 40% of the emissions. And California's climate change program is the only one in the world that has a robust role for forests as well, which is something that I and the Nature Conservancy and my colleagues have been instrumental in integrating into that program.
So Simple Aaron's Fund, do you work with them, which helps preserve?
We have worked.